I'm Jack and welcome back because today I'm going to give you guys a review for a movie that came out earlier this year on Netflix that I was late to the party for, but I finally got the chance to watch it. The Bubble. It is directed by Judd Apatow and it stars Karen Gillan, Pedro Pascal, Keegan-Michael Key, Iris Apatow, David Duchovny, Leslie Mann, Maria Bakalova, and many more. And with that said, let's get started. The Bubble follows a group of actors who get together to film a blockbuster action sequel, and it is set during the COVID pandemic, and they are sneaking out, hooking up, and melting down, and they face a very troubling production, and they try to deal with it. Kicking off the positives, I thought Karen Gillan, Keegan-Michael Key, and Pedro Pascal were the standout in terms of the cast members. Whenever their characters were on screen, I found it very enjoyable, and I think they did a good job with making me care for those characters the most. And I think the cast as a whole, they tried their best with this movie. I think they did a good job with what they had to work with. And there's a good concept behind this movie about a group of actors trying to film a blockbuster sequel to this franchise. And they're in the pandemic, so they have to deal with lockdown protocols and restrictions and dealing with the troubled production. There's a really good idea there, and it pretty much serves as a satire of sorts. And then production, there's some neat production design put here and there. That's about it, sadly. This is easily tied with Morbius for being my least favorite movie of the year. And I do not say that lightly.
What?
And kicking off the negatives, this movie is way too long for its own good. It's like a 2-hour, 9-minute movie. It feels like it should have just been a simple 90-minute movie, and that's it. It just feels way too overblown, way too overlong, and it just does not fully develop the characters and the story enough for me to feel attached or invested in what is at hand. Not only that too, but even the comedy, for a comedy movie, I barely found this film funny, and I'm not exaggerating. Now, people who know me know that I'm not necessarily hard to get a laugh out of. Even in movies like Thor, Love, and Thunder, where as much as I like the movie, I do think the humor doesn't always land in that movie, but when it lands, it lands. In that movie, I laughed significantly more times there than I did with The Bubble. The Bubble is so unfunny, and it feels like it's trying to be a dark comedy, but it doesn't want to go into those dark places with the jokes. And with the jokes we had, barely laughed throughout the whole runtime. There may be a few scenes that had a chuckle out of me, and that's about it. And considering how I am with comedies, that's a rare feat that I don't recall ever happening over the last few years. Not only that too, the characters can be so unlikable and egotistical, aside from a select few, that I just do not care for what's going on screen. And it just feels like the movie just has no sense of narrative. It feels like a lot of scenes were just thrown in there, stitched together, and it pans out like it's a whole feature-length movie. And certain scenes just feel very awkward, and the writing feels very cringeworthy and just weird to me. It just made me feel like I'm sitting there like, is this really something I'm watching happening in real time?
Holy God, what are you showing me? His head. Come on!
And for a movie that serves as a comedy satire, it doesn't work there, but even as a drama, it doesn't work at all. It's so tonally inconsistent. It's like, does it want to be a comedy satire and be a good one at that, or does it just want to be a drama that deals with the fact that they're in a troubled production in the height of the COVID pandemic? It just did not work for me. It's like it tries to do so many different things. One scene, you have a very dramatic scene where a character might be in danger, and then the very next scene, they play it off as a joke, and then none of that matters, and they go back to being comedic and lighthearted. It just feels so out of the blue, so out of left field, and it just happens way too quick that I just can't really feel invested or attached to what's happening, nor can I really take anything seriously in this movie. And not just that too, but when you have stuff like that, you make it hard for me to care about the story, and it really doesn't. It starts off with one thing. It had a decent start at first, but then the more the movie goes on and once it gets to that climax, it just gets ludicrous and way too over the top for me to pay attention and maybe suspend my disbelief, because it really asks me a lot to suspend my disbelief. This movie really reminded me of Tropic Thunder, which in of itself was a parody about both Hollywood and so is the Vietnam War, with the characters who they play off of, who they parody of. And that movie, it worked. It was funny, and it actually had characters and stories that were well developed. Here, it's like it's trying to do the same thing, but it doesn't work. The jokes don't land. And even in terms of being a comedy satire, I prefer Netflix's Don't Look Up far more than this, and if you want to check my Don't Look Up review, you can go check it out right up here, up at the top right of the screen. At least that movie, as divisive as it is, at least it had a message and at least was a lot more entertaining or clever with what's its message, and it tries to do something with it, while with The Bubble, you have the idea, but it doesn't go deep enough into it. It's just surface level stuff. The characters don't get much development, and even the story itself doesn't get much development. It plays off like a movie where so many just things are happening all together, and it's just like, what does this mean? What does this amount to? And because it's not funny, that's even worse, because if you have a comedy that really isn't funny for 2 hours and 9 minutes straight, we have a problem. And that's exactly what happened here. It plays out in the ways you literally imagine it to. And I literally sat there like, yeah, I am not feeling surprised whatsoever with this movie. There's so many weird things happening. The characters here do serve as like archetypes of real life actors. Like, for example, one of the characters did a very offensive movie that people didn't like, and this character's trying to make a comeback with her career. Another one's very smug and whatnot. And then another actor's like, wants to rewrite the script. It does so many things you expect. It doesn't really bring anything new to the table in terms of that, and the characters don't get much development for them to feel like a standout character, one that's worth being invested into. And even as the movie goes on, like I said, they can be so egotistical and unlikable that it's like, this just isn't entertaining to watch. It's not entertaining to watch a movie where so many characters are unlikable and it doesn't feel like there's any redeeming qualities or moments that makes you care for them, because so many weird moments happen. Like, I gotta bring up a spoiler. I can't not bring this up because of how weird it is. Skip to that exact time if you want to avoid this spoiler. Oh boy. Some character tries to run away and gets shot in the hand, and I was like, what? What just happened? And it feels so weird. It's like, again, it starts off as one thing, and then it just devolves into something else entirely, and it just feels so odd. So rather than being a moment that had me laughing, I sat there just like, why? It just feels so weird. And I just don't know what happens with this movie. It's like, you have a good talent here. The cast really tries to do their best with this movie. You have a good cast, a director that's made some great comedy movies, and a good idea for a movie, but it just doesn't work.
You serious?
It's just so crazy to me how a movie like this didn't work. It had so much potential to be really good, but it just doesn't do anything new. The humor is so unfunny and so much of a miss 97% of the time. And literally, it just feels so long for its own good. They could have trimmed this movie so much more and focused on certain aspects of this movie, because even the characters don't feel fleshed out by the end for me to be invested. It feels like by the end, there are a few things about him that's changed. There are a few scenes from The Bubble where I thought that is a good scene. And that's saying a lot for this movie. And this movie also has cameos, and there's some cool cameos. They were fun to see. But as a whole, I did not enjoy The Bubble. I found it to be so unfunny. I found it to be very long and very meandering, and I just did not really enjoy the experience. This is easily one of my least favorite movies of the year, and tied with Morbius for being my least favorite of the year. So this movie was very much a disappointment. It was not entertaining, and despite the huge amount of star power they had with this movie, it should have worked, but it doesn't. So in the end, I'm going to give The Bubble a D+. I could have given this a lower score. I could have, but again, the cast members tried, and there's an idea here that could have worked, so I had to give it a little bit higher than I would have. And the funny thing about this movie is, it came out on April 1st, just like Morbius. Oh man, that's funny. They really did that. That's hilarious to me. Two of my least favorite movies of the year came out on the same day, and that being April Fool's Day, just... oh, man. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on The Bubble. What are your thoughts on this movie? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And stay tuned for some upcoming movie reviews and videos coming soon. I'm going to have a video on my ranking of the summer movies that came out this year. Hopefully, you guys will stay tuned for that. And don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below. So please go down while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And stay tuned for more. And please get out of my bubble.